Welcome back to Chat Like a Native.
Glad to be here.
So picture this. You're sitting in a meeting, and your boss asks you this painfully simple question. And you understand every single word they said.
Right, obviously.
You know the exact answer in your native language. You even know all the English vocabulary you need. But the moment you open your mouth, just static.
Total blank.
Yeah, your mind goes completely blank. Well, listen. By the end of our time together today, you are going to know exactly how to answer English questions faster without your mind ever freezing up again.
It's a huge relief once you get this down.
It really is. Because if you've ever had that terrifying moment where your brain just hits a brick wall mid-sentence, you need to know it does not mean your English is bad. It just means your brain is, doing way too much at the exact same time.
Exactly.
So the secret here is stopping that panic search for the perfect sentence. Instead, we're giving your brain a clear, safe first step. And to make this super easy to remember, we've got a punchy little memory tool for you today. It's the STAR method. S-T-A-R.
I love this acronym.
Right. So S is for start safely. Use a simple reply starter. T is think slowly, because slowing down actually helps you speak faster. A is to add a detail, keeping your answer to one basic point. And R is recover calmly, since true confidence is really just keeping going after a mistake.
It's such a practical framework.
So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the mechanics of why that dreaded brain freeze happens in the first place.
Well, it's a phenomenal place to start because, the blank mind phenomenon is probably the most universal pain point for any adult learning a second language.
Oh, yeah.
The pressure in those first 3 seconds of silence is just immense. You can literally feel your heart rate spike, right?
And your internal monologue is just screaming like, say something, you know these words.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to challenge the common wisdom right out of the gate here. Because I think it's really easy to assume this freeze happens just because our vocabulary isn't big enough.
People always think that.
Right. We can't find a word, so we blame our lack of studying.
Yeah.
So isn't a vocabulary deficit the actual root of the problem here?
It's the most logical assumption, but it is actually entirely incorrect.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The freeze doesn't happen because you lack vocabulary. It happens because of a cognitive bottleneck. Your brain is suddenly being asked to perform, way too many highly complex jobs simultaneously.
Okay, so it's like a computer crashing. Like you've got Google Chrome open with 50 tabs.
Yes.
You're running a translation tab, a grammar tab, a vocabulary searching tab, a pronunciation tab. And the CPU just completely freezes because there isn't enough RAM for all those background processes.
That is the perfect way to understand it. In a fraction of a second, your brain is trying to comprehend the question, formulate a brilliant idea in your native language, translate it, select the grammar, scan for words, avoid mistakes, and try to sound natural.
Wow, when you list it out like that, it's a miracle we speak at all.
Right, the system just crashes. And this overload is generally triggered by 3 specific habits.
Let's break those triggers down.
So first, attempting to translate a completely finished sentence from your first language into English before you even start speaking.
Which never works, because languages don't mac over one-to-one.
Exactly. The translation just gets stuck. Second is trying to start with an absolute masterpiece of an answer.
Like trying to sound like a textbook.
Yeah, the pressure to make that very first sentence grammatically flawless just paralyzes the language centers of the brain. And the third trigger is stepping into the conversation without using ready-made reply starters.
Which implies that native speakers aren't actually creating brand new sentences from scratch every time they speak. We just kind of assume they are.
Oh, native speakers rely heavily on prefabricated chunks of language. We use familiar patterns to get momentum going. But when a learner tries to build from zero under social pressure, panic sets in. Cortisol floods the system.
Wow.
And cortisol physically blocks the brain's ability to retrieve words.
Okay, so the harder you try to force the perfect sentence, the worse the freeze gets.
It-
Which brings us to the first step of our STAR method, the S, start safely. If searching for that perfect sentence crashes the CPU, what should we actually do in those crucial first 3 seconds?
You use what we call a thinking bridge.
A thinking bridge. Now, I noticed looking at this that these bridge phrases seem highly situational, but honestly, incredibly basic.
They are.
Like if someone asks for my opinion, I might just say the way I see it. But if I'm totally caught off guard, I can literally just say, I'm not completely sure.
That's all it takes.
It reminds me of opening a door. You don't need to walk through the entire building right away. You don't need the whole architectural floor plan of your argument. You literally just turn the handle and push the door open.
Turning the handle is the perfect metaphor. Because a thinking bridge isn't just an empty filler word like or
Right.
it serves a highly specific neurological function. When you immediately use a familiar pre-built phrase like, "That's a good question," you accomplish
Yeah.
two things.
Okay, what are they?
First, you signal to the other person that you're taking the floor, which instantly removes that awkward social silence.
Oh, that makes sense. You claim your space.
Exactly. And second, and more importantly, you give your brain's processing center 2 to 3 free seconds to relax, drop the cortisol levels, and fetch the vocabulary for your actual answer.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second. Don't these simple phrases sound a little, I don't know, too basic?
How so?
Imagine you're an intermediate learner, maybe a senior manager, trying to command respect in a meeting. If your boss asks for an update, doesn't starting with, to be honest, I have mixed feelings, sound a bit unprofessional? Like it undermines your authority.
It's a really common fear, but we have to look at the psychology of communication here. Simple. When spoken smoothly, projects far more authority than complex when spoken haltingly.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's this concept called the fluency illusion. Listeners judge your competence based on the rhythm and confidence of your delivery, not on how complex your syntax is.
Right, because if you memorize some incredibly dense academic opening, you just sound like a robot.
Yeah, and the second you forget one preposition in that memorized script, the entire facade crumbles and you're back to silence.
Memorized complexity is really fragile.
Exactly. Reply starters are flexible. They give your brain a safe direction without backing you into a grammatical corner.
Okay, so I've used my thinking bridge. I bought my 3 seconds. The door's open. But I can't just stand in the doorway forever, right? I have to walk into the room and finish the thought.
Right.
This is where people get lost halfway through their own sentences. How do we navigate that?
We navigate it with the A in the STAR method, add a detail. And to do this without overloading the brain, we use the one-to-add structure.
The one-to-add method. It seems specifically designed to stop people from trying to sound overly profound.
It really is.
Like that brilliant cooking example. Someone casually asks, "Do you like cooking?" And the learner freezes up trying to formulate. Cooking is an activity that provides both practical nourishment and deep emotional satisfaction.
I mean, it sounds like a dissertation defense. No native speaker talks like that over a casual cup of coffee.
Right. A native speaker just says, "Yeah, I like it, especially when I have enough time. It's so much lighter." The one-to-add method basically forces you into that natural rhythm, doesn't it?
It provides a reliable framework. A totally natural spoken answer really only needs 3 components. 1, a direct answer to the question. 2, one single reason. And add one small detail or example.
Let's run a scenario through that. Suppose a colleague asks, "Do you prefer studying or working alone or with a team?"
Okay, step 1, the direct answer. I usually prefer working alone. Step 2, the reason. It helps me focus better without distractions, and add the extra detail. But if the project is really complex, I do like discussing it with the team.
Direct answer, reason, detail. It flows effortlessly. Let's do another one. Do you think English is difficult?
Step 1. Yes, sometimes it is difficult. Step 2. The hardest part for me is speaking quickly. Add the detail. I can understand a lot when I watch movies, but answering fast in real life is still challenging.
Look at the cognitive load of that answer. It's incredibly light.
It is. It's not tangled up in conditional clauses or advanced perfect tenses. It just moves cleanly from A to B to C.
So it puts guardrails on your thought process so you don't wander off into some grammatical maze.
Exactly.
But let's deal with the reality of human interaction for a minute. Even with a safe bridge and even with those nice little guardrails, real conversations are chaotic.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to forget a word. So
Yes.
let's move to the T in STAR. Think slowly. When the wheels inevitably start to fall off, what should we do?
Well, the first step is eliminating the destructive habits we fall back on when we feel vulnerable. The most damaging one is the apology loop.
Constantly saying, "Sorry, my English is bad."
Yes, or sorry, I don't know how to say this.
I hear this constantly from brilliant, highly capable professionals. And it breaks my heart because it completely changes the power dynamic in the room.
It really does. It shifts the entire social burden onto the listener. I mean, a small apology is fine if you've genuinely caused a huge misunderstanding.
Sure.
But chronic over-apologizing does 2 harmful things. First, it reinforces a negative self-image. You are literally training your brain to associate English with failure.
Oh, wow.
And second, it makes the conversation incredibly uncomfortable for the other person because suddenly they have to stop talking about the project and start, comforting you and validating your skills.
You essentially force them to become your therapist instead of your colleague.
Exactly. So instead of the apology loop, we need to use recovery phrases. Instead of, sorry, my English is bad, you just calmly state, let me try to explain that another way.
It signals that you're still actively driving the conversation. You haven't surrendered the steering wheel.
Right. And that ties directly into the concept of thinking slowly.
Okay, this is where I have to point out a massive paradox.
Okay.
Our stated mission today is to help the listener answer faster. So why is the T in STAR explicitly telling them to think and speak slowly?
It does feel counterintuitive, right? But dropping your physical speaking speed is actually the ultimate key to answering faster overall.
Walk me through that.
When you try to speak at the rapid pace of a native speaker, your brain's processing buffer just runs out. You haven't given yourself enough time to fetch the next word.
And that leads to abrupt stops, panicked ums and ahs, and then the freeze.
Exactly. By speaking just a fraction slower with a controlled rhythm, you eliminate those freezes entirely.
So you're not just rushing blindly to the finish line and tripping over your own feet.
Right. Confident speech is about clear, controlled rhythm. You start slowly, you use short phrases, you pause intentionally between ideas, and you continue calmly. That rhythm gives your brain the continuous processing time it needs while your mouth is moving.
Start slowly. Use short phrases. Pause. Continue calmly. It's almost musical.
Yeah.
But what about the ultimate roadblock, the forgotten word?
Ah, yeah.
Because I've seen learners bring an entire fluid conversation to a grinding halt because they can't remember one single highly specific noun.
And that happens because schools train us to view language as a vocabulary test. Like, if you don't have the exact word, you fail.
Right, 0 points.
But human communication is about conveying meaning, not passing a test. If you forget a word, you don't stop. You circumvent it. You describe it.
So the true mark of fluency isn't knowing every word in the dictionary. It's the agility to navigate around the holes in your vocabulary.
Absolutely.
But wait, let me challenge this. Doesn't circumlocution sound a bit, childish? If I'm in a store and I completely blank on the word receipt, and I have to say, the little paper you get after UK, doesn't that make me sound uneducated?
You get past that embarrassment by realizing that native speakers do this constantly.
We really do.
We all have moments of brain fog. A native speaker will snap their fingers and say, can I get the little paper thing that proves I paid?
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's a natural human phenomenon. The listener doesn't care that you forgot the word receipt. They just want to know what you need.
So if I forget the word helmet, I just say, the hard thing you wear on your head when you ride a motorcycle.
Yep.
If I forget appointment, I say, a planned time to meet the doctor.
Exactly. You use the basic foundational words you already possess to explain the complex word you temporarily lost. You can even preface it with, I don't remember the exact word, but it's used for, the problem is solved and the conversation keeps moving.
That drastically lowers the stakes. It completely removes the paralyzing pressure of needing a flawless vocabulary all the time.
It really does.
So we've covered starting safely, adding a detail, and thinking slowly. That brings us to the final piece. The R, recover calmly. How do we take all these abstract concepts and make them automatic? I mean, practicing alone in your living room is easy. How do we prepare for the biological stress, that actual cortisol spike of a real human being staring at you, waiting for an answer?
Well, the first step in recovery is redefining what confidence actually means in a second language, because most learners mistakenly believe that confidence equals a state of zero anxiety and zero mistakes.
Like flawless execution at all times, like a news anchor.
Which is an impossible standard. Real confidence is simply the ability to recover. It's the emotional resilience to correct a wrong word, to restart a sentence that got tangled up, and to stay in the interaction without fleeing.
Wow, that's powerful.
A confident speaker just manages the messy moments calmly. So to build that resilience, you have to introduce low-pressure practice to desensitize your brain to the stress.
And I know one of the tools for this is a simple 10-second timer. Walk me through the psychology of why a timer helps.
It's simple. Pick an everyday question. Set a timer on your phone for 10 seconds and force yourself to start answering before the timer hits 0.
Just to force the start.
Right. The goal is not grammatical perfection. The only goal is to train your brain's muscle memory to execute a fast start, to open the door and deploy a thinking bridge before the anxiety has time to paralyze you.
It's essentially exposure therapy for language anxiety.
It really is.
And there's a really comprehensive 7-day plan to build this habit system. I want to unpack the logic behind this progression because it seems very deliberate. Day 1 is just memorizing 5 reply starters. Day 2 is answering 10 simple questions out loud using the 1-2-add method.
Nice and easy.
But day 3 is where it gets uncomfortable. Recording yourself answering questions for 1 minute. Why does recording yourself work so well?
Because recording yourself bypasses the internal critic.
Oh, interesting.
When we speak, our internal anxiety amplifies every tiny error. We think we sound terrible, but when you listen back to an audio recording, you gain objective distance. You realize your English is actually much clearer than your anxiety let you believe.
That makes so much sense.
You aren't listening for perfection. You're just listening to confirm that you started quickly and recovered from your stumbles.
The fear is almost always worse than the reality.
Always.
So moving through the week, day 4 is practicing describing unknown words, like the receipt or helmet exercises. Day 5 is focusing entirely on slowing down your physical speaking pace and mastering the pause. Day 6 is role-playing a scenario, like ordering food. And day 7 is the culmination.
Right. Day 7 is having a short, real-world conversation with someone where you focus on absolutely nothing else except starting faster.
Just opening the door?
Exactly. You don't try to use advanced vocabulary or perfect grammar. You just focus on the fast, safe start. Small, targeted repetition creates neurological speed, and speed creates true confidence.
And as you move through this progression, you should also be building out an emergency phrase bank.
Oh, absolutely. These are your verbal parachutes, phrases you have preloaded for when the system inevitably crashes.
What are some examples of those?
Well, if you need time, you say, "Give me a second to think about how to phrase this." If a question is unclear, you don't panic. You just say, "Do you mean?"
Or if your sentence completely falls apart halfway through, you just smile and say, "Actually, let me say that again." Or, "That came out wrong. Let me start over."
Yeah.
It shows incredible emotional intelligence and control to just reset the moment without panicking.
It communicates to the listener that you are fully in charge of the situation, even when you make an error. You don't need to hide your linguistic weaknesses. You just need to manage them gracefully.
This entire framework completely flips the script on how we view second language communication. Let's pull all of this together for everyone listening.
Sounds good.
The most vital takeaway here is that when your mind goes blank, you are not failing. It is not an indictment of your intelligence or your English proficiency. Your brain is simply overwhelmed by a cognitive traffic jam and is begging you for a safe, simple first step.
That's the core of it.
You do not need perfect textbook English to be a highly effective communicator. You need a system. Implement the STAR method. Start safely with a bridge phrase to buy yourself 3 seconds. Think slowly to give your brain processing time and keep your rhythm. Add a detail using the incredibly light 1-2-add method. And recover calmly when things get messy.
Just give your brain that simple first step.
Exactly, and you will find that the rest of the conversation naturally unlocks.
It changes the entire dynamic.
Right.
Speaking stops being an academic test you have to pass, and it becomes a genuine human connection you get to experience.
It really does. So I want to leave you with the final thought to mull over today. We spend so much energy terrified of stumbling over our words. We dread the blank mind, the forgotten vocabulary, the messy sentences. But what if your conversational mistakes aren't actually barriers at all? What if those slight pauses, those moments of creatively describing a forgotten word, those honest smiling corrections? What if those vulnerabilities are the exact moments that make you sound the most authentic, relatable, and deeply human to a native speaker? Next time you are chatting and that heavy silence hits, don't panic. Just reach out, turn the handle, and open the door. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.